What is up, everyone? This is your host, Eric Holtzman, and welcome to the Mindful Motion Podcast. What's up, everybody? How are you? So today I am doing a Solocast to just kind of shed light on some of the things that we're going to talk about tomorrow in my podcast with one of my teachers and mentors, Greg Mack. He is a big influence on how I'm thinking about exercise these days. He has some incredible wisdom and a wealth of knowledge on how to think about exercise in a way that promotes health. And what I wanted to talk about today was just the pitfalls that people get into when they exercise. And there's this like divide within the industry of exercise where there's people that train, we do our running, we do our lifting, we go do the hard stuff, and then we have our rehab space where if we get injured, we go do rehab to prepare for the hard stuff again. But there's this gap. There's no in between. It's either you're hurt, go do the rehab. And if you're not hurt, let's go push ourselves so that we have to go do the rehab. There's no in between, which is kind of crazy, but it's sort of in line with the health industry and how this healthcare system works. It's very reactionary. It's not preventative. You don't typically do things proactively to prevent things from happening. You usually wait till there's a big issue, and then you go to a hospital, you start taking medications, and you manage the illness. We need to start changing the way that we approach health, and as well the way that we approach exercise. So, I mean, everyone is saying out there that exercise is supposed to be this, panacea for health. It's supposed to promote lifespan and health span. But the problem is it doesn't always work for everybody. Now, why is that? Why are some people out there crushing it and feeling their best and just being rock stars with their exercise, while others are, crumbling and getting hurt and everything bothers them? It's not the people that are getting hurt. It's not their fault. And I have a feeling that some people, they are classified as lazy because they don't want to train. But I feel like maybe they're not training oftentimes because they've had bad experiences. They've been injured. Something doesn't feel right, and maybe their experience is so, lack of a better word, crummy, that they don't want to go back and train because they don't feel the positive benefits that people that love exercise get. So there's a lot more people in this space than there are those who are on, Instagram with their fitness model pages and doing really, really well, under 10% body fat, just crushing in the gym. Those people are rare. Most people are the people that we see day to day in our office, people that don't want to exercise for whatever reason. Sure, laziness might come into it, but I do feel like there's a good amount of people that want to train, but they just get hurt. So where can we start to help those people get into exercise and feel like they're getting the benefit? And that's sort of what we're going to be talking about with Greg Mack tomorrow. And I hope you guys join for that discussion because it will be very insightful, and he'll be able to bring in concepts and nuances that I'm probably not even aware of, which will be amazing for me to learn. And I hope you guys learn from it as well. But let's go back to this question, why doesn't exercise work for everyone? I think the underlying thing here is that people think of exercise and they have a prepackaged idea of what it's supposed to be. And the problem with doing that is if you do something yourself and it works well for you, it's not likely going to work for 10 other people. Maybe 10 or 20% of those 10 people might be able to do what you do, but the vast majority of people won't be able to do exactly what you do without feeling something different. Maybe it's not a negative different, but for a good chunk of those people, whatever you're doing might injure them, because we're all at a different level of fitness, but we also all have different types of joint shapes and range of motion and tolerances to force and so on and so forth. So we can't prepackage and pre-can exercise for everyone, because that's where people get in trouble. That's where people get hurt. And unfortunately, the science within the exercise industry does prepackage things. They do studies and physiological studies on how many reps you should do, how many sets you should do, what exercises are going to give you the types of results you want. And that's all good and well. But the problem with that is they're studying, let's say 20 to 50, 25 to 30-year-old athletes, and they're concluding that this is the result that they got. But as we know, most people aren't athletes, and they certainly aren't in that age demographic, which changes everything. So we can't rely on studies like that to give us information. And all the information that most people hear are based on studies like that. And the best study is N of 1, the study of yourself. And so when we think about how we train, we want to try to discover what works for us in a safe and effective way. And that can be a little tricky without any sort of knowledge base to pull from. This is why having a really smart and patient and creative exercise professional can be helpful to navigate some of the trickiness that comes in when we try to exercise and promote health, especially if we have injuries, if we're older, if we don't have a lot of experience in training. All these things can create complications when it comes to trying to design an exercise. So I guess my point is what I really want to think about is how can we view exercise and what the future of exercise industry might look like. And if we think about the vicious cycle that people go through, and maybe you're one of these people, you start training, maybe you're new to exercise, and you go in the gym and you start working out and things are sort of feeling pretty good, and you start to progress. Maybe you're 8 weeks in, and then all of a sudden you're starting to get some aches and pains, and then now you're starting to feel some discomfort in your joints. And maybe 12 weeks in, you get a full-blown diagnosis of some sort of like elbow tendonitis or shoulder impingement or arthritis in your knee or something like that. And then what do? You typically get a prescription from your doctor to say, okay, now you're going to go to a physical therapist, or maybe if you have a back issue, you're going to go to a chiropractor, and you're going to go do that rehab. You have 15 sessions. Here's your prescription. Go do it. Okay, so you have a diagnosis, you have a prescription, you go to your 15 sessions, and you start to feel a little better. You don't really feel the same discomfort. It might still be there, but you're like, I can work out again. So you go work out again, and you train for another month, 2 months, and you re-injure yourself, the same injury or something different. And you go back to rehab, and you just keep going through this vicious cycle of training, rehab. And this seems kind of silly. Shouldn't exercise be promoting health? Shouldn't it basically mean you don't have to do rehab? I thought rehab was for people that get in car accidents or fall off a building or something like that. Unfortunately, a lot of people get hurt just from the exercises they're doing. And the tricky thing is, it's not like it's a one-off, I did an exercise and I got hurt. Sometimes that happens, but more often it is the repetitive nature of their inappropriate exercise that starts to take a toll and breaks down their system because they're not tolerating it well. That leads to a sort of overused chronic injury. And those things are really tricky to fix. Acute injuries like a broken leg, broken arm, a torn muscle, it's a little simpler to fix because there's a clear indication of what happened. You know, this thing got injured. Okay, let's treat that thing and it will get better. And usually those things are simpler to fix. But when we think about a chronic issue that might have taken years to develop due to poor movement patterns, due to inappropriate forces and bad control, they start to take root in your nervous system and they change the way you move. They change the way that you do things. And there's not a clear thing that you can point to that says this was why it hurts. It's become a systemic problem that can be much more difficult to address because it's not like a broken arm. You don't just have one place. Now we have a lot of things to look at on your brain, your nervous system, and a lot of pieces of the body that are starting to compensate and lose function, and you're losing control of, and you're not even aware of it. This is what a vast majority of people are dealing with. And it's a little more challenging to fix, but there is a solution. But what I'm hoping for, and this is what we're going to talk about more tomorrow with Greg Mack, is that we need to find a way to maybe create something more like a pre-hab training program. And that seems kind of silly, but the idea being when we train, everything we do has intention and every exercise has a purpose, and it's promoting your function. It's promoting your health long-term. It's not breaking you down. and meaning that you don't have to do rehab. Your exercise is in a form of proactive version of rehab, making sure that you don't get hurt, making you more resilient, making you stronger. And this might be a little more tedious for people because it does require some thinking, but it doesn't have to be complicated necessarily. Small little nuanced changes to training can do wonders for preventing injuries long term. Just to name a few examples, if you were to slow down your lifts and control the weight more effectively, that would be a huge benefit to you in lowering injury prevention or preventing injuries from occurring. So simply, most people lift, they tend to move pretty quickly, and they don't even think about controlling the load. They don't think about stops and starts. They just move the weight forward and back. Well, if you are young and can tolerate a lot and don't have any history, you get away with that. But the problem with doing that is weights can be changing when you're moving them abruptly, and those abrupt shifts when you try to change directions quickly and you're not controlling the motion, you might be exceeding what your body can do and handle and not be aware of it. And those insults over and over again create inflammation within the tissues, within your nervous system, that start to compound and lead to problems. If we could think about slowing down, contracting muscles, you'll be using less weight and it will be harder, which means less chance of getting hurt altogether, and you get stronger, you get better control over your body, and you get more benefits from what you're doing in your training. So it's like multiple pluses by thinking of exercise in a way that might be more customized for you, but also thinking of it in a way long-term of how can I train today so that I can train tomorrow, so I can train in a month, so I can train in 2 years and keep my joints healthy, keep my muscles healthy, and make sure that I'm not losing control or function within my system. It's a very different perspective. And I think if people were to start to adopt this and start to think things through a little more, the medical industry would start to look at training, exercise, and personal trainers in a different light. The big issue is that there is no communication within the medical field and the fitness field. They're like two separated places. And the PT, physical therapists, and the chiropractors and the physios are technically in the medical field, even though they are exercise-centric oftentimes. But they don't communicate with personal trainers all that often. And there's some ego there. Maybe they're on their high horse and they've gotten so much education, they don't view trainers as intelligent, so they don't see a reason to do that. But I hope, and what I'm seeing within the industry is that there is a shift. There are more trainers trying to get educated to understand physiology and anatomy to make better decisions. People are becoming more educated, and that is really the big thing. You yourself need to be an advocate for your health. And this doesn't apply just to exercise. It applies to going to your general physician. It applies to if you're going to go get a surgery, do your homework, learn about these things, because oftentimes doctors, they're not trying to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, I guess they're not trying to be, what's the word? Man, I'm blanking, sorry. But they want to do best by their people and their clients, but they have such little time. So they can't explain things to you. They can't give you all the options. Some options they think are silly, but might not be. Point being is you might have, if you go in for surgery, you might have more options than you think. Surgery might not even be the best option. A lot of times surgeons just want to cut because that's what they're trained to do. They don't really think about holistic approaches. They don't really explore other avenues that could be more advantageous long-term and leave you in a better place, because that's not their job. So it really is up to you to be your own advocate, to learn about the body, to learn about your body, most importantly, to figure out if you have an issue, what might be the best solution. And personally, from my experience having cervical surgery and other injuries, I've learned very quickly how much a surgery can impact you. And if you need one, it's important. You definitely should get it. Like I had to get it. I would have been paralyzed potentially without it. But point is, some people go into surgery too quick without exploring other things that might be less invasive, and things that actually might help them get past where they're at past the pain they're in, and improve their life. Whereas if they did surgery, or if they do surgery, their life is restricted, and they will never go back to normal. So once you alter your body, it's like that forever. So ultimately, there needs to be, hopefully will develop into being more communication with the medical field and the training field. And that's going to require trainers to be more educated, which I'm seeing that happen slowly and steadily. But it will also require people like yourself to be more educated, to want communication between these places, to request it, because ultimately nothing really changes within anything in the world unless there's a public that demands it. It's always like an economy in a way, supply and demand, right? If you guys demand more communication amongst medical providers and trainers, and you demand more from your trainers to know more and to be able to help you more and actually prevent problems from happening, then you might see a shift. So I guess what we need to see is more of a scientific approach from trainers. And we need to actually start to think about what's appropriate for each person, because there's no reason for people to be getting injured when they train. And I think if you guys understand that training should feel good, exercise should feel good, there shouldn't be pain when you're doing movements. If there is, something's wrong, then making different decisions, maybe altering how you're exercising so that you can continue to do it. The last thing you want to do is put yourself out for 6 months because you hurt your knee and you can't even walk, let alone train. It affects your life in such a negative way. So this is what the sense of the discussion will be with Greg Mack tomorrow. We're going to go into data collection. We're going to go into how to hopefully bridge the gap between exercise and the medical field, because if that happens, now we're talking about preventative care. We're talking about really taking care of your muscular system for life. And I'll tell you this, like, I don't know if you've ever heard this before. I never really thought about it, but your muscular system, which some might say is the biggest organ system in the body, it is an organ system. Just like your heart, just like your liver, your skin, your kidneys, it is an organ system. It produces hormones, it helps circulate blood, it does so many things, obviously moves us, stabilizes joints, prevents injuries, it protects you from forces. It is such an important organ system that's often not really thought of that way. And when you start to think of it like an organ system, then you might consider taking care of it in a better way, a more meaningful way. You know, we have dentists to check out our mouth and teeth for cavities and cancerous sores to prevent problems. We don't really have a muscle doctor, do we? I mean, really, it's a physical therapist is the closest thing, but what do? They don't really prevent injuries too often. They are reacting to a diagnosed symptom. You got, patellar tendonitis now. We diagnosed it. Now we can treat you for that problem. But why did that problem happen? Was it overuse? Was it even related to the knee, or was it something else going on in the body that caused that to happen? Those aren't the things they do. So you treat the patellar tendonitis, but then you're maybe still have the root problem there, and it just keeps reoccurring. So we really do need some sort of muscle specialist. And ironically, Greg Mack's program is called Muscle System Specialist. He did that intentionally because he realizes, and so do I, that your muscle system needs to be managed by someone. You can't manage it yourself unless you want to spend a decade learning about that. And, it's just like having a doctor manage his own health. He can do that, but it took him 15 years to learn how to do that. And the cool thing about doing it this way is you don't need necessarily a trainer 3 times a week. You can work out on your own and then just go in every few months to someone who understands how to manage your system to check on things that might be breaking down or not operating well, so that you can stay healthy and function at your best. And that's the thing. These things are very nefarious in nature because things will be breaking down as we speak. parts of your body might be not working at their best. You could be losing sensation. You can be losing contractile control, losing endurance, and different parts of your body, right to left. It doesn't happen symmetrically. It doesn't happen in obvious places. And so having someone understand these aspects and then be able to check in with your system and manage it as you go through your exercise process, this is the future of exercise. This is the way to keep your body healthy and prevent injuries from happening. Let's get away from this train rehab cycle, and let's start to think of it more of like a pre-hab training to optimal health so that you guys can stay strong, vital, resilient, and your whole life and do all the things you love. Go on those trips, those adventures, play with your kids, grandkids, still be going to the grocery store, walking upstairs and doing housework when you're in your 90s. That is my goal for you, myself, and everyone who wants to put the work in and grow. So I hope you guys found this valuable, and I hope you all tune in tomorrow for the episode with Greg Mack. It's going to be fun. We're going to dive in deeper on this stuff, talk about a bunch of things, and I think you guys will find it's pretty insightful. So I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon.